Tanshi, hello. My name is LDUPRE. I am 25 years old with the Métis Nation of Ontario, currently living in Toronto, Ontario, but I was born and raised in Mississauga. So I've always been an urban Métis youth. I just recently wrapped up my Master's of Social Work degree at the University of Toronto, where I specialized in social justice and diversity, with a particular focus on the power of leadership as a healing tool for Indigenous youth, and also looking at the ongoing harm that the social work profession is contributing to based off of their colonial approaches to social work education. I am also currently sitting on council for the Toronto and York Region Métis Council as their women's representative, where I work with all of our other council members to create more leadership and opportunities for community building for our Métis families and individuals in the city. I'm also working with our youth committee and our youth rep, who are together trying to bring together youth across the city through a grant that we've received and a project called Weaving the Sash, where we are trying to bring together urban Métis youth to get to know each other, to build genuine, meaningful relationships, and to start reclaiming our place as Indigenous peoples, and to learn more from elders, senators, and other knowledge keepers about our culture and our history as a key point of identity development. One of the main challenges I've found as an urban Métis youth has been just disconnect from not only the land, but just Métis specific spaces. You know, there is so much going on in the city and so many distractions. And if you think about it, just physical barriers, physical concrete getting in the way and interfering with our connections to the land and each other that are challenging to overcome. I think another challenge is being in an urban Indigenous space, or being an urban Indigenous person. We are constantly trying to find that balance between our traditions and our culture and our, again, connections to the land, but also balancing that with our contemporary identities in the city. And what I have found challenging but also beautiful at the same time is that it is possible. And a lot of the teachings I've received over the past few years have helped guide me to understand that it isn't one or the other. We don't need to be traditional people or contemporary people. Our identities are complex, particularly as Métis peoples. And so how can we blend those together and strengthen our identities, but in an urban space? It's not easy, and I am constantly trying to do the work to develop my confidence in my own identity and how I am carrying out my culture in these spaces, but it's definitely something that can happen. And I think the more that we as Métis peoples, but also as Indigenous peoples in general, we build relationships with one another and we start to reclaim spaces, whether those be physical spaces in the city, in different buildings and in different organizations, but also our visual spaces. So in the online community, how are we presenting ourselves? How are we making ourselves strong, presenting ourselves as strong and powerful communities and people? These are things that we are constantly needing to do in order to not just thrive in an urban space, but survive. That's something that has been a big struggle for myself, has been, you know, growing up and going through the education system, and even in the working world now. There are so many people in urban spaces that, you know, just have these misconceptions and stereotypes so ingrained into their minds that I've had many people say, you know, oh, well, Native people don't even really exist anymore. And to that I find hilarious, because our communities are the fastest growing across the country. But I think it speaks to, again, these ongoing misconceptions that unfortunately have persisted for many years. Looking at the positive, I think that things are starting to change. So while the urban space presents challenges for Indigenous youth to connect with the land, to connect with each other, and with all of the other distractions getting in the way of us, reclaiming our identities and carrying on our traditions, there's also some tremendous work being done to support our youth in the city. For example, myself, I have been very fortunate to get to know other youth through nonprofit organizations doing great work, such as Canadian Roots Exchange, which is a youth organization that brings together Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth. It's focused on rebuilding those relationships and engaging youth in leadership opportunities where they can get to know one another and break down negative stereotypes. Also, other organizations like Taking It Global, which I work for right now, we're doing a lot more work to present Indigenous youth with opportunities to share our voices and to really start shaping where this country is going to be going moving forward. Other places like Anishinaabe Health Toronto, which offers wonderful programming, and I was able to begin ceremony for the first time. Being in the city, a lot of people think there is an opportunity to participate in ceremony, and it's difficult sometimes to find those spaces. But once you start looking, I think there are great opportunities out there. So again, for me, Anishinaabe Health, I received my spirit name and colors and clan with Elder Carpenter, and that was an incredibly important opportunity for me in my identity development and my healing, was reconnecting with culture, with ceremony, and in getting my name, clan, and colors. Some other organizations to mention: Native Youth Sexual Health Network has been doing phenomenal work in the city, also in supporting two-spirited youth. Two-spirited youth in our communities face even more challenges and struggles in dealing with their identity in an urban context. And so the work that Native Youth Sexual Health Network, not just with those youth, but all Indigenous youth, has been just phenomenal and really inspiring. There are tons of other options that I feel like I am forgetting. Native Child and Family Services, they offer lots of different programming beyond just the child welfare work that goes on there. The Native Canadian Centre of Toronto, Dodom Kenosha, all of these different places are really stepping forward to start supporting youth and our communities in, again, reclaiming who we are in the urban Indigenous space. One other to mention is the Native Women's Resource Centre. Last weekend, on October 4th, we had our annual Sisters in Spirit Vigil for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited peoples, and just the work that they are able to do on such tight budgets is incredibly inspiring. So, in summary, really, I think being an urban Indigenous youth is incredibly complex. But then again, regardless, across the country, and all of the youth that I've met throughout my work and had the privilege of working with, the challenges are similar. Whether you are in a rural community, an isolated community, particularly in the north, or you are in these city centers, there are unique challenges in all of these spaces, but there's also a lot that carries over. And I think that's where a lot of support and relationship building comes from, is when youth from all of these communities can talk to one another about these challenges. So I think there is a lot to be said for our youth movement that we're forming now amongst Indigenous youth. There are now more youth who are identifying as Indigenous than ever before. There are more Indigenous youth entering post-secondary than ever before. And while there are still massive social justice issues within our communities that really need to be addressed, what inspires me and keeps me going is seeing so many youth taking leadership in bringing awareness to these issues and starting to address them themselves within their communities. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time for us as Indigenous peoples, but particularly for Indigenous youth. And more than anything, I just want to say how proud I am as to be a young Métis woman, and proud of all of the work that my fellow youth are doing across the country. So thank you for listening to my story, and we'll talk to you soon.